Hey, I quickly want to finish what I wasn't able to say in class. I'm sorry I had to leave so abruptly, but I was talking a little bit about what I understood to be postmodern, and particularly in relation to missions and missional theory. For one thing, in my opinion, postmodern is not a new thing. And so to talk about the postmodern age, there is a cultural, you could speak of something being culturally postmodern. But philosophically, to say that something is postmodern, you mean it is after modern. And what does that mean? Well, I was talking in class, for one thing, it means that we recognize the limits of rationality. Modernism, think Spock. When you think of modernism, think Spock. Logic. The ideal modernist thinks that if I had all the evidence, I could be completely objective and I could come up with the truth. Whereas postmodernism basically admits that there is no human being that is able to get a bird's eye view of the truth. That we don't have, we neither have the infinite capacity. In fact, Adam didn't. It's not even just a matter of a fallen mind. Sure, we do have a fallen mind, but even Adam, in all of his human perfectness of a sort, was finite, and therefore Adam had a perspective. Adam did not see the world from God's point of view. He saw it from a location. And so none of us will ever have a completely objective perspective. Now, I do believe that there is more and less objective. And in that sense, postmodern, there was the kind of postmodern cliff with Jacques Derrida and Michel Foucault and all of these philosophers and such. But you can't live there. You can't. You have to come back and say, well, I'm not going to question that I'm actually sitting on this chair. But modernism was very rational in focus. Think Enlightenment. Enlightenment is the height of modernism. And so part of being after modern is recognizing that there is more to human truth than just reason. There is more to truth than just logic. And in particular, as I was saying at the end of class, there is more to truth than just the literal. That there is a richness to story, and a richness to symbols, and a richness to rituals. That simply, in fact, when I hear, like C.F.H. Henry, C.F.H. Henry was a brilliant neo-evangelical from the 1950s and 60s. But C.H.F. Henry basically viewed the Bible as a set of propositions. Like you could list from 1 to, 533,000 all of the propositions of truth that are in the Bible. That is such, in my mind, a two-dimensional, shallow understanding of truth. There is so much richness to truth that human language can't capture. If I can capture all of the truth in human logic, then the truth is really not very profound at all. When I think of something being profound, I think about something that is ineffable, something that can't be described with human words. Think of the Holy Spirit in Romans 8, who intercedes for us with words that cannot be expressed. Then you're beginning to get towards God. When you're talking about truths that are beyond human thought and human expression and beyond human comprehension. When you get into that realm of the mysterious, that's when you've taken off and you're off the two dimensions and into worlds unknown, dimensions that can't be numbered. That is profundity in my mind. And so postmodernism in that sense basically says to modernism, you're not so smart. Says to Spock, you know what, Spock, you're not so smart. You're still finite. You still have a perspective. Sure, you've got an IQ of 233, but God has an IQ that's infinite. So anyway, one element of postmodern is the kind of jump into the unknown and the mysterious and beyond the literal and beyond rationality. Very key to modernism is the subject-object distinction. What do I mean by that? So in modernism, we aim for this ideal of me as a completely objective person. So I am standing on the side like a jury that has no emotions, and I'm looking at the world as an object, and the world is outside of me. And I somehow, this goes back to René Descartes in the 1600s, this idea that I can somehow become objective and removed from the world and look on the world, even look at myself as a dispassionate observer, as if I'm just watching and I'm not actually involved in it. And I actually do believe, there is great value in trying to be objective. So like I said, I'm not. There is a kind of craziness to the person who says, well, you can't possibly get outside of yourself, and so why even try to be objective? I think that's foolish. But postmodernism basically says that there is no sharp distinction between me and the world. I'm part of the world, and I can't get out of my head. I am not in some detached spaceship in some other dimension looking on the world. I am in the world. I am in it all. I'm not outside looking at the world from the outside. I am part of what I'm looking at. And so nobody can be 100% objective. Again, I don't agree with the far reaches of this. The far reaches of this would say, you can't talk about any truths that have to do with a woman because you're a man, and so you just can't talk about women, Ken, because you're a man and you can't, or I'm of a person. A person might say I'm a particular race, and because you're not that race, you can't say anything true about my race, and this kind of is in tension with what we were saying this afternoon about trusting Native Americans or trusting those in Africa to tell us what Christianity should look like for them. I really agree substantially with that. I very much substantially believe that we should let Native Americans, for example, with the help of the Spirit, together as the church, working out their salvation with fear and trembling, that they should be able to work out the particulars of faith. At the same time, I'm not willing to say that there are no objective or common standards that apply to all people and all places and all time. For example, take female circumcision in Africa. I am quite comfortable with saying that if some Christian in Africa were to say, well, as Christians in Africa, we believe in female circumcision. I'm quite comfortable to say, survey says you're just flat wrong. Or if someone says, well, in our form of Christianity, we like to kill innocent people. It's our interpretation of Leviticus. Again, I'm not going to go there. So to me, postmodernism is a spanking, as it were, a chastening, a kind of saying that we were wrong to think that we could be completely objective. But again, that doesn't mean that you can't be more or less objective. Believe me, you can line up three people and have them give their point of view, and most of us would agree, yes, this person is more objective than this person, which is more objective than this person. There is some truth to the subject-object distinction, even if it's not something that can be completely said. Another part of the modern thinking is the myth of progress, that things are inevitably getting better and better and better, and science is getting better and better and better. I think World War I, for one thing, in fact, I can't remember where I was reading this. It wasn't for this class, but it was talking about how one of the reasons why England is less Christian in practice than in the United States is because there's a sense one factor is that World War I shattered in many respects the kind of optimism of the British people. World War II might have done that to us, except we won, and so we were able to continue that kind of optimism. Vietnam, to some extent, was a backstep in relation to that optimism. But there is no certainty of progress. Modernism said there was, but it cannot be counted. We don't know. In fact, I would say we're always only one generation from being just as pagan as anybody in any point in history. Lastly, so what we're talking about here is a kind of chastened optimism, a recognition that things may not inevitably get better and better, and he talked about that, Bosch did. And then lastly, there's a greater sense of interdependence in the postmodern era, whereas the typical modern was individualist. Individuals can get a hold of all the truth. In a postmodern age, there is a kind of return to a sense of interdependence rather than independence. Less individualism, more of a sense of us being in this together. Some of these things are an attempt to return somewhat to the way things were before modernism. I would say that once you've passed through the fires of modernism, you can't entirely return to the unreflectivity of before the modern age. I'm not sure that we really want to, if truth be known. So postmodernism is a kind of return to pre-modernism, but with eyes wide open. Okay, those are things that I might have said if we hadn't have run out of time, and I hope that's helpful, or at least will spark some fun discussion in class. So there you have it, less than 11 minutes.